Welcome to the TJ Malden Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel.
What's up, everybody? So glad that you are here today. I am incredibly honored to be able to sit with Miss Bev Vance Aikens, and she's coming today to celebrate. Here at our church, we have 17 years of Celebrate Recovery, which is a ministry that was started to help people walk out of addiction, and not just to substance abuse. Sometimes we're addicted to our own pride, or addicted to anger, or addicted to shopping or money, or a million different hurts, habits, and hangups that kind of grab hold of our lives and try to keep us really from being who God wants us to be. And so our church is celebrating 17 years of that ministry and its fruitfulness and effectiveness in our community. And she's going to speak tonight. Many of you know Miss Vance Aikens. She has been talking for a while now publicly about freedom that comes in sobriety, and she is a nurse. She works in addiction recovery. She has clients that she gets to minister to in a lot of ways, spend time with, and to share her story. She also is the mother of our vice president, J.D. Vance, and really her life. What's interesting to me is I've gotten to know what everyone else in the world has gotten to know about her. And what's unique about her story is her story was told before she got an opportunity to. Before she was able to really put a voice to trauma, and to put a voice to addiction, and to put a voice to freedom, that story was told for her, and she had to kind of walk through and navigate those things in real time. And she gave permission, obviously, to JD, and we'll talk about that some, even how he was so gracious in just saying, hey, I'll can the whole project. But one, I just want to say I'm incredibly honored that you're here. Our entire staff is nervous. Everybody's like, are y'all nervous? Who's nervous? Because you're just what God has done in your life, and the freedom that you've been able to articulate and to encourage in others is so beautiful. We've all just been overwhelmed at the opportunity to meet you. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. And before we jump,
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to, if it's cool with you, I'm just going to dive in and begin to just ask and have a conversation. For you, and I know so many of the interviews and conversations that you've had circling around this begin with kind of, how did your life begin? How did your life start? And give me a snapshot, if you will, for our listeners and those who may not be familiar. They may have seen the movie or read the book, Hillbilly Elegy, but when it comes to you, apart from the book, many have seen the movie. It's a beautiful adaptation of the book. I think the actors did an incredible job, but you lived that life to some, and so what for you, your childhood, early life, what did that look like before the tailspin of what the world might see now?
Well, my dad was a terrible alcoholic growing up, and he was very abusive to my mom, not to my brother, my sister, or myself. But he was very abusive to my mother, and that's what a lot of my childhood memory is him beating her. I have one memory where I called the police. And he was literally trying to shove her into a washing machine and calling her dirty and a bunch of other names. And I think I was 11, 12, something like that. And I didn't know what to do. And I called the police. I thought he was going to kill her. And when the police came, my parents band together against me. How dare I call the police? And they were angry with me. And that was so confusing to me as a little girl. And I remember telling my mom, I thought he was going to kill you. No, we were just fighting. But my childhood was full of chaos and dysfunction.
So it was I guess you would say it was a normalized cycle of abuse.
Yes.
He was abusing alcohol, abusing your mother, emotionally, verbally, abusing.
All of the above.
Yeah.
Physical, emotionally.
To your mother. But
yes.
So for you all, was he be able to put on a veneer for you all when it came to Obviously, you said the physical abuse didn't extend to you guys, you and your siblings.
I think she protected us from that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think he may have been a little physically abusive with my brother, who is 10 years older than me, but never my sister or myself.
I got you. Now, he eventually gets sober.
He did.
Right?
He did get sober. He died sober.
That's amazing. So what was that transformation like for you and your family, having lived in a pattern and a cycle of abuse and addiction, to see, hold on a second, you're supposed to be one way and now you're completely different. What was that like? He
was a completely different person. I loved him. He was my favorite person in the whole world. I loved him even when he wasn't sober. But especially when he got sober, he was the greatest man. My kids never saw him drunk.
Wow.
Never saw him abusive, and they loved him. They loved Papaw.
That's amazing.
And
so that's Papaw and Mamaw,
yes.
right? Okay. Awesome.
Yes.
And so in his sobriety, was there I've sensed this and see this and have experienced this myself. When you walk through hurt, habit, hang-ups, and any kind of addiction, there always seems to be a black cloud of shame or guilt that wants to attach itself to you after that. Did you watch him grapple with any shame or guilt? Or
I think he did. He never showed it to us, but he went above and beyond trying to make up for the bad times.
So he owned the make amends part,
yes.
whether he
yes.
could articulate
exactly.
that I'm making amends to those that I can make amends to.
Yes.
Do you think then, watching that played into, obviously we know, and we don't have to get into any stats or anything, but if you genetically predispositioned, if your parent was an addict, you're over 65% likely to struggle with some form of addiction in your life. Do you think that was there floating under the surface beyond even genetics, just emotionally, and looking for a sense of peace and calm when the headache happened, right? Wasn't it
it was a headache and I work and I took a Vicodin and that was all she wrote. I've never felt better than I felt that day.
So in that moment, it was beyond chemical. It was like life had been chaotic. All of life had been chaotic. Relationships, childhood trauma.
Yes.
And for the first time, it was a sense of, man, this is peace. Is this what peace feels like?
It was the best feeling I still remember how good I felt.
And no high after that ever felt like that.
No.
Right?
No.
You're always pursuing that first experience or that first taste or that first euphoric feeling of calmness. So if you don't mind, unpack for me then. So that happens. Childhood is, and I don't want to rush through any part that you want to unpack a little more, but I think it's beneficial for people to know that you were, before you experienced addiction, you experienced trauma.
Yes.
Hard time and brokenness and feeling rejected and isolated and alone and a lack of peace. And there was no, from what I understand, you had no faith-based element in your life. No one pointing you to Christ or pointing you to God, telling you that there's a better way, there's a hope. There is a Father who doesn't abuse or abandon or reject, and He's a good one early on. So there was this wounding self-message in a sense of anticipate chaos.
Well, as growing up, when Dad would get drunk, he would say, I'm your God, I'm God, I pay the bills. And I grew up hating God.
Yeah,
I thought God was mean, and if that's what God was, then I didn't want any part of it.
Right.
So I was scared of God.
Yeah.
And I didn't really find God till I found recovery.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I find that to be so oftentimes our parents' words and the weight of what they say, it does have such a tangible effect on us when it comes to faith and when it comes to God and our perception of God.
True.
I remember early on, my grandfather was a pastor. My parents split when I was young. My dad had been married quite a few times, and my mom as well. And our childhood was pretty chaotic. And I remember my dad saying this quote one time. He said, "If you need God, TJ, it means you're not intellectually strong enough to grapple with life on your own." He's like, God is for the intellectually weak. If you need Him, He's a myth or whatever. And his father, my grandfather, who was my pa, he was a pastor, and he was so loving and funny and joyful. And I was like, I really like this guy. I don't like this guy too much, but I really like this other guy. And But in a similar sense, when I was 12 years old, my grandfather had an accident, and the church absolutely eviscerated him. They abandoned him. And I looked at church early on in my life and said, if this is what if Christians are supposed to look like Jesus, like my grandfather says, if these church people are supposed to look like Jesus and this is how Jesus treats people, I don't want anything to do with Jesus. And so for years, I ran from Christ, and I did not want to be a part of a church because I was like, these people are terrible. Like, these people are unkind and they're harsh, and they literally just eat each other alive, And when I met church people, that was my experience. But when I met Jesus, it was incredibly different,
Yes.
right? And so back to your recovery, you found God in recovery,
Yes.
and so your addiction and brokenness and the things that you grappled with. Now it was opiate. That was your
opiates, heroin.
Okay.
Well, it started out as Vicodin and then ended up being heroin.
Okay. And so as you walked through that, obviously it puts you in a position to where you compromise relationships, you compromise even your own self-worth and who you are, decision-making and those kinds of things. Was there a moment, and I think this is important to hear, I had a stepfather who was a terrible alcoholic. My mom was married to him for about 15 years, and I watched a lot of enabling happen. And I think for family, it's so hard to say no, and to shut the door, to change the locks, to not give the money, to not shoot the Venmo. It's 2026, so the kid asking just $20 more, $15 more. From where you've been and what you walked through, it took you a while to reach rock bottom. And I've heard you say before, rock bottom is essential for everyone, and that you wished you would have got there a little faster.
Yes.
So you could have begun to build out.
Right.
What would you say to a parent or a friend who's walking along beside someone that they love today, who's in addiction, and they feel like turning their back on them, even momentarily, or changing the locks or saying no to the money is unloving? What would you say to them?
That it's not unloving, it is loving, and you will probably save their life. Let them hit rock bottom so you don't lose them.
That's good. What was do you mind sharing with me what your rock bottom looked like, or was it a series of events?
When my mom was alive, she gave me 3 Vicodin a day, and then that just basically, I took her Vicodin and then either stole her medicine when she went to sleep, or that just gave me enough energy to go out and find what I really wanted. Right. But my rock bottom was when my mom was my enabler.
Okay.
When she died, I had no one, and my kids had turned their backs on me, and I remember feeling so alone, and I had no money. I was sleeping with strangers for money.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I couldn't do that anymore, and I wanted to die. And I reached out. I had some periods of sobriety, and I reached out to a friend and just said, I need help. I'm going to die out here. And he knew of a place in Kentucky, and I went to Kentucky and got clean and sober.
Now, I say this because I think it's amazing. Your dad, you watched him walk through this addiction, then you watched him walk in freedom from that addiction. And then you walk through addiction to opiates, and then obviously compounding guilt and grief and shame and all of those things that were happening. And you allowed yourself to be devalued to a place to where you weren't living as God intended. Like, you're a daughter of the King, right? Like, in my perspective, like,
right.
and so you go through recovery in Kentucky from this friend. How many times, because your dad, from what I've read, it was one time, right? He went to treatment one time, and he's like, I'm good to go, y'all. Never again. Won't even touch it, And for you, it was wasn't it multiple opportunities?
I went through several treatment facilities. I went through two residential. The one that took for a while, and then several outpatient facilities. I went to outpatient 3 or 4 times at least.
Now, I've heard you advocate for inpatient long-term recovery, right?
Yes.
Because that was when it came to Kentucky, you being there and staying, how long were you in the program?
Well, I stayed there for 30 days.
Okay.
But then I went to a sober living for 18 months. And back then, sober livings were hard to find. I talk about that in my story. Actually, a pastor helped me get into a sober living.
Okay.
And I lived there for 18 months.
That's amazing. Now, what do you feel like, or if you can articulate it, the difference between the short term and maybe even what you think, maybe what held you back from committing to the long term, and then what made you finally say yes to being able to say, okay, regardless of whatever, was it a kind of a sense of I have no life outside of this addiction?
Yes.
And if I want to build a new life, what's giving up 30 days or 18 months?
That's
or what?
exactly it.
Okay.
I had nothing. I had lost everything. I had lost my children. I had lost my nursing license. I was unemployable. I hated myself. My prayers to God, I would get high and say, let this be it. Let me die. And then when I wouldn't, I would be so angry that he didn't let me die. And it's like, God, why didn't you let me die? And you'll hear about it tonight. But at the end, my last time that I got high, I went to a party and I woke up 3 days later and I must have died. But I was so angry with God that I eventually woke up. And that's when I knew that I needed help.
Right.
That's when I called my friend and said, "You've got to help me. I'm going to die out here, and I don't know if I want to die. I can be a better person. I need to be a better person.
Yeah.
And I need my kids back. I wanted to be a mom again."
Yeah. I'll say this because I want to touch on the mom and the son and daughter relationship, because you have a daughter and a son.
I have a daughter and a son.
6 grandchildren.
I have a daughter and a son, 6 grandchildren, 1 on the way.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So this is what I think is interesting. And even in the conversation, and this is what those that are listening in today, the common grace of the Lord and the mercy of God, that even when you weren't all in on believing in him, you were still mad at him. You know, like that's what I can, in your conversation, I see God weaving this path to recovery and redemption. It's like I was addicted to substances. I was doing whatever it took to get them. I hated myself, and I hated the God who I was praying to that I didn't believe existed. You know what I mean? And even in that, it's so beautiful to see, like, no, there is a God, and he does love you, and he does have a plan for your life. And there is something better on the other side of addiction. There is something better on the other side of brokenness.
Yes.
And I love how God in his grace redeems the time. You know, I think so many people think that they think, man, I spent 5 years in addiction or 15 years in addiction or my whole life in addiction. And oftentimes people think addiction is a young man's and a young woman's game, right? Because we see what's advertised and the ODs that are heartbreaking, the ones, the funerals that we have to do that we grieve the most at it's the 15-year-old that got the fentanyl or the 21-year-old. Precious, even in our community, we had some precious kids succumb to that. But what your story reminds me is that addiction touches every person from every background, from every socioeconomic, spectrum at every season of life.
It does.
And through every season, whether you're a child, a teenager, a parent, whatever it is, it can grab your life. But I love your testimony so much because it reminds me that there is no point that's too far gone, but there is an end of the rope. And when you meet that rock bottom, so many people need to hear the reminder that you're giving, that when you reach rock bottom, when you get to the end of your rope, there is a God who, in spite of all that you've done, wants you, loves you, and while you were doing all those things, he was after your heart. He was pursuing you. Yeah, I tell our church this all the time, and our little college ministry we do here, I say I'm so glad that there's a verse in Scripture that says that while I was yet a sinner, that God demonstrated his love in this, that while I was yet a sinner, Christ died for me.
Yes.
It didn't say when I'd finally started going to church, or when I'd stopped using, or when I stopped sleeping around, or when I stopped being ratchet, a hooligan. That's what I call myself. That's what I was before Christ. I was ratchet and I was a hooligan, all right? And a ragamuffin, if you will.
Right.
And so it was then that God loved me. It was then that he ascribed worth to my life and to your life. It wasn't when you had cleaned yourself up and everything was perfect that God said, oh, finally, it was all of those little moments where you did wake up the next morning that God said, while you're yet sinning, Bev, I have a plan for you and I have love for you. And I think that's what people need to be reminded of, that they haven't, because they no longer value themselves in addiction, that God still sees them as valuable of redemption and that he can redeem that time. All of that time that people think they lose, whether it's 5 or 10 or 50 years in addiction, that God can do amazing things with a surrender.
Yes.
With a yes.
Yes. And so many moms have lost their kids through addiction. And I hear that a lot, that I want my kids back and my kids don't speak to me. And what I have to tell them is it doesn't happen on your time. It happens on God's time. And if it had happened on my, I was clean for 2 years before my son even spoke to me. And I thought he should speak to me right away.
Right.
And, doesn't he see how good I'm doing? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And he told my daughter, well, it's just a matter of time before she messes up again. And it took him 2 years before he would literally even speak to me.
Yeah.
And that's what I would tell the moms out there that are struggling, that are newly clean. Give it time.
Yeah.
Keep reaching out. Keep doing the next right thing.
Absolutely.
And eventually the kids will come around.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in your time. It happens in God's time.
Yeah, I think that's so important because you're right. And you had 2 years of sobriety. He had 30 years of trauma, right? And so I think sometimes for the victim who your life began as a victim, right? Like being put in scenarios as a child that you didn't deserve, right? It built this identity, right? And this cycle in you that you bought into and were perpetuating in some way. And so I think a lot of times for those walking in sobriety or those walking, and not just, like I said, not just substance, but being clean from other things, being free from other addictions, they think people should immediately respond with, well, there wasn't a big welcome home banner flying and you didn't roll out the red carpet. And I remember, it's so interesting, and my mom and I went through a season very similar because of my stepfather who was an alcoholic and some of the things that my siblings and I experienced in some of those environments. There was just hatred and bitterness, honestly, in me towards my mother. And we went through a season like that. And I remember I was about 30 years old, maybe 28. And I remember it was on me. I was like, I just got to tell her I forgive her. Like I forget. Like I got to start this process, right? And I remember we were sitting together. We were fishing actually on a little boat. And I said, Mom. She said, Yeah. I said, I need to tell you something. She said, Yeah. I said, I forgive you. And this look came across her face, and she said, For what? Like, what are you talking about? And in that moment, all of the anger and frustration that I thought I was like, I'm getting over this. I'm like, I think I could burn this whole place down right now. Like, what do you mean? But what I recognize is like the Lord, and I'll say this about redeeming the time. She had experienced her own trauma and her own brokenness, and the Lord gave me grace to see that she was doing the best she could with what she had been given, the hand that she had been dealt. She had not been dealt a great hand in some ways. And so, but it didn't happen immediately for us either. There wasn't like this, I forgive you and we're restored and everything's
right.
Like it took time I'm like, all right, this month, I'm going to intentionally call her. This 2 weeks from now, I'm going to put it on my calendar. Like, I'm going to text my mom. And sometimes it's just like, I really love you, or I really care about you, or I'm praying for you today. And in the beginning, there were a lot of times where it was like, I don't know that I want to send this. And I don't know that I want to say this. But I know if you remove all the stuff, this is how I really feel about her. Because at the end of the day, God used her to bring me to this planet. And she's honorable. And by God's grace, she came to faith in Jesus. She walked out of that terribly abusive relationship, and God has restored our relationship to some degree.
Yes.
But even to this day, I'll say this because I think it's important for people to hear. I love this too because I feel like in some ways I'm having a conversation even with some of the things that my mom thought and walked through, and hearing the perspective of a child of saying like we really do love, like the kid really loves the parent. They're just scared they're going to be left again. I think even as a 40-year-old, right? Even as a 45-year-old and a 50-year-old, both of my parents, we've walked through really tough seasons, and you want to let them back in. You love that person more than you've ever loved anyone. They were your first love in so many ways, right? Like the first person you listened to. I love 90s country because my mom had a whole box set of 90s country tapes in her car that we rode around and listened to. I love the smell of a Marlboro 100, the first light of it. I love that smell because my uncle, that was what he smelled. You know, like there are things that you, regardless of what they do or what they want, you deeply love them. But I think hearing you say is so good for parents and for children. Allow that space.
Yes.
Give that space. Don't force, in the same way that you forced your addiction on your children, like they didn't ask for it. Don't force your sobriety and your newness on them. Allow them to come to you and just be consistent and build the trust. That's what I hear you saying.
And when you said to your mom, "I forgive you," and she said, "For what?" I did not realize. I could not understand why my kids were so angry. I thought, I didn't hurt you. I hurt me.
Yeah. Do you know what I've been through?
I could not understand why they were so angry with me. And then when I read JD's book, it clicked. It all made sense. And I'm thinking, I don't understand why they're not speaking to me. I haven't done anything to them. I tried my best. Don't they see that?
Yeah.
And then when I read his book, it clicked for me. And it opened up a dialogue that we needed to have that really helped us heal. Not just me and him, but me and him and his sister.
Yeah, also. Your whole family.
Yes.
And I think those conversations are incredibly painful.
Yes.
Right? Like, I think people think if I say yes to Jesus and I get sober, then things aren't going to hurt anymore. Like, it's not going to be hard anymore. It's going to be easy. I think it's more difficult when you're following Christ and you're walking in sobriety, because emotions and feelings that you used to be able to escape with a substance or with a person or with spending money or whatever your drug of choice is.
Right.
Now you have to deal with it. Now you have to have the conversation. You have to sit in those feelings and navigate how to process that.
Yes.
And so you've been able to have those conversations and reconcile to the point to where your 10-year sobriety celebration was at the White House, right?
Yes, it was at the White House. And
I can say this, there will never probably ever anybody in the history of ever who gets to celebrate their 10-year sobriety at the White House.
And I kept telling him, we don't have to do this. You didn't promise the American people that. You promised me.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do this. And he was like, no, I want to.
That's amazing.
It's important. And he made it happen, and it was beautiful. And I got to invite so many of my friends from, at the time I was going to a 12-step meeting, and, so many of them got to come, and we celebrated in the Roosevelt Room. It was beautiful. And he gave us our own personal tour, and we got to stand up behind where Caroline Leavitt stands and, talks. We all got to act like we were the press secretary.
That's cool.
And I did my Caroline Leavitt imitation, and, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And so what has it been like? And I'll ask this, maybe the not fun side of it, like the original unpacking of your life on such a public scale, right? Like this celebration is happening because of this brokenness that you walk through.
Yes.
Right? How do you, and this is what I want, if you will, how do you encourage people, or give a word of encouragement to someone who says, like, I'm walking in this sobriety, we're celebrating beautiful things, but like, do you still grapple with shame or guilt?
Oh my gosh, yes.
How do you navigate that when you feel those things and you look back on certain seasons of what you feel like you may have missed? How do you navigate? Because I know for some people that's a trigger, right? Of saying I feel so much shame or so much guilt, then why am I even trying anymore? And they revert back to old patterns and behaviors that are toxic. So are there a couple things for you that you say, when I'm experiencing shame or guilt, is it your community? Is it a small group? Is it Celebrate Recovery, your 12-step? What for you keeps you grounded in those moments of feeling that tension?
Prayer.
I love that.
Prayer. I do a lot of praying.
That's awesome.
I pray a lot to God, and I have a wonderful community.
Yeah.
I have a wonderful sponsor who's become my best friend, and
awesome.
I probably talk to her 5 or 6 times a day, and I'm very blessed.
That's amazing. I should have known you were going to say prayer. You were talking to God before you loved him. And so now that you do love him, I'm like, of course it's prayer, right?
I'm a big prayer. I'm a big believer in prayer.
Now, do you think, let me ask you this, maybe you've never been asked this before. Do you think that dialogue with God and that conversation with him is fruit from all of those private prayers and journals that Mama kept between her and God that you never even knew about?
I would have to say yes.
Yeah.
And you know that. You heard that. Yeah. When she died, we found all these prayers that she had prayed to God. And actually, I've got one framed. There's one framed in my house. Each one of us, because she had written each one of us our own prayer. And we each had it framed. And JD has his framed and hanging in his house.
That's
and
beautiful.
My daughter has hers framed and hanging, and mine's framed and hanging. And we each found our own prayer. And she did a lot of praying and a lot of journaling. And we didn't even realize that she was doing that. So even when Dad was saying he was God, Mom knew he wasn't God.
She was running to the one that
Mom was really praying to the one that had all the answers.
Yeah. So we're sitting here today on the shoulder of Mama's prayers.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
That's beautiful. So prayer is something that when you walk through seasons or as you just move through the rest of your life in sobriety and as a testimony to the goodness of God and the possibility of freedom, prayer is primary. What are there programs or a system that you use? I know you have a sponsor, so you would say to someone that may be listening that's grappling or they have a family member grappling with addiction, make sure you have a sponsor, make sure you have someone in your life that knows all and will hear all without, the old phrase, we listen and we don't judge, right? Like someone who you can say anything to,
right,
and they'll speak truth to you?
Yes.
Okay.
I would tell them to reach out for help. Help is out there. And, I love Celebrate Recovery. I started in NA, Narcotics Anonymous, went to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and now I'm in Celebrate Recovery.
Okay.
Because I felt like I needed more Jesus.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about Celebrate Recovery is you don't just have to be addicted to drugs. You can be addicted to enabling.
Yeah.
You can be addicted to gambling. You can be addicted to sex.
Yeah.
You can be addicted to whatever you're addicted to, and we love you and we accept you and take you where you are. But what I would tell to someone that's struggling is to just reach out for help. Help is out there. There's a million treatment facilities. Call a number. Go to a 12-step meeting. It doesn't have to be AA. Pick one. Pick any of them and go and let the people know that you're struggling. And they'll give you phone numbers, and that's a place to start.
Yeah.
And start there.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, always be like me, pray.
Yeah.
Dear God, help me.
Yeah. So take that step towards God and people.
Yes.
That's what I hear you saying. Take a step towards God and take a step towards people.
Yes, you reworded it right for me.
No. That's what when I hear you saying, I'm like, man, for me, I'm a simple guy, so I gotta make things real short and simple, right? But like, step towards God and step towards people that will hold you accountable and not affirm your bad choices, but affirm who you are,
exactly,
who you really are, truly are intrinsically. I want to circle back if I can, because I know for me, growing up in dangerous at times, chaotic household and environments, and then beginning to repair that relationship after freedom came to my mom, and she's in a great place. She loves the Lord, and she has a great relationship with me and my sisters now, and she's a wonderful woman, and I'm grateful now that we have a relationship. But that was it was a hard journey to begin that process. And I won't say even to this day that there's still not at times tension, right? We're probably 11 years now into, well, gosh, I'm getting old, 12 years now into our first conversation of, hey, I forgive you. To where there's still moments where even as something as simple as she'll go to kiss my cheek sometimes. We're at Thanksgiving and she'll go, and I just feel this like tense recoil, and I'm like, Why am I doing? Oh yeah, I know why I feel that way, almost even involuntarily. And so, but by God's grace, and I'll say this for me, and I want to ask you this question, lead into this question. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then she had a mastectomy, and things went great for her. And then about 4 years ago, we got the call that she had stage 4. It had metastasized, and so it's all throughout her bones. And she's still with us, praise God, and she's doing treatment. But at the proposition of her no longer being here, it absorbed a lot of that time. It redeemed a lot of that time. And I recognized, I was like, okay, if she's gone tomorrow, what good are all of these wasted emotions that I have now? Because she's no longer that woman she was. She's no longer married to the man that she was married to. She's no longer she's no longer being absent. She's no longer choosing men over me or my sister. She's no longer doing those things. So all of these things I feel, if I hold on to them now and I keep them, they're all wasted emotions, because all they're doing is damaging me and the opportunity for a relationship with her. So what are some of the things that you did? I say that because I'm interested getting to hear the other side and some of the thought processes. What are some of the things that you've done that maybe some other parents are out there that you've proactively done and you're doing to rekindle those relationships with your children and to establish good relationships with your grandchildren?
Well, I let them know that I'm available all the time, and I prioritize them.
Yeah.
And I, like your mom, chose men over them, and I didn't realize that I did that until I got into recovery. I don't do that. I don't. Men are not in my life. I choose a dog instead. I have a dog, and
they're happy to see you every time you come home. They're never not happy to see you.
Yes,
yeah.
And I guess I just prioritize my kids and prioritize my grandkids, and I'm available. You know, I'm flying out to DC July 24th, and my daughter got a divorce and moved in with me.
Okay.
So I let them know that I'm available. I'm just available.
And you're incredibly transparent. That's one thing that I appreciate about my conversation with you and the things that I've read and heard you say. Like, you are, I feel like if you have the personality and temperament, and I think it lends itself to be helpful to family members of, if you feel like you're struggling, I don't feel like you're at a place to where I'm going to tell somebody. I'm going to have the conversation. I'm going to be open about this difficulty. I'm going to be open about this temptation.
Yes.
So do you feel like, even though some of the things feel shameful or tough to talk about, do you feel like transparency helps you and has helped you lean more into sobriety and being who God has called you to be?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. I can only be transparent and authentic. That's
Yeah.
I just, I'm just a simple girl. Like, you're a simple guy. I'm just a simple girl.
Yeah.
Just, simple lady. I guess I'm not a girl anymore.
So at this point, your relationship with your kids, things are going well? Good relationships with with your grandchildren?
Yes.
What do you see the most now, being because you not only are you an addiction survivor and walking free from that addiction, but now you work in advocacy, right?
Yes.
And you're a nurse, right?
I am.
Okay, so you're a nurse in a facility or in a clinic, or do you private consulting? Can you unpack that a little bit?
I worked in a facility for 3 years, and I'm back in school trying to get my bachelor's degree, and it just got too much. So I actually work for a psychiatrist now.
Okay.
And but we have an intensive outpatient program.
Okay.
And I help with that. And I just do health histories all day long. So I'm just there. Yeah.
So,
and it's a new job, so I'm still learning. I've only been there a week.
Okay.
But they're very good about letting me.
So how's it going? How's your company? You tell me about this new job you have.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. They're really good about giving me time to take off to speak.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Sure.
And they're good about giving me time to take off to go to DC.
Yeah.
So it seems to be working out really well. And the IOP program is new, and I want to be a part of that. So it's so far so good.
Do you feel like, and I promised you before we started that I would not ask you any politically leaning questions, and I'm not. I tell our church this all the time, and if you've been listening to the podcast long enough, you know me well enough to know the gospel equally offends Republicans and Democrats. So I'm not. I am not here. And if you're a good pastor, you will equally offend Republicans and Democrats. And so I'm not here to be political. But I do want to ask maybe a question of: do you feel like the world perceives you differently, or that people perceive you differently because you did bring into the world the second most powerful man in the world?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah, I do think they perceive me differently. I think people are really surprised when they meet me to find out that I'm just me.
Yeah.
Just average.
I think that's what the world connected. I think that's why so many people connect with JD to a certain degree, because it's like, well, there's somebody that like they understand life of a normal American, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of politicians on both sides of the aisle that have experienced similar upbringings in life. So what do you think for you moving forward in sobriety, this new job, speaking opportunities? Do you have maybe for your own life, here are some dreams that I have, here's some desires that I have in my sobriety, some things that I would like to see grow or change, or here's some hopes of my own that I want to build or dream of?
Well, I want to stay sober. That's number one. It's a one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's a one day at a time program. So I have to pray daily that God gives me just give me today.
Yeah.
And I want my bachelor's degree in nursing. I'm back in school. So I've got goals. And I just want to get closer to my kids and grandkids.
That's
and
awesome.
Just be there.
That's a full life.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a full life.
Yeah, and be a good dog mom.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's no problem there because you've replaced a dude with a dog, so I'm sure the dog is privileged of care and love and attention. Do you cook for the dog? Like, do you
no,
share
I don't
eggs?
do,
Okay,
I'm not that good of a mom.
I know some people.
I'm not that good of a no.
Listen,
she gets good food, but
I know a family member. All right, I won't put any of my family on blast, but they loved their dog so much. This dog has passed, but when they cooked their breakfast, their dog got a fried egg over easy on top of their food. When they cooked themselves a steak, their dog got a half a steak. I'm like, I love my dog.
Yeah.
But he's getting old Roy. You know what I mean? Like he is 100% getting old Roy.
Yeah. I love my dog too, but she's getting dog food.
Absolutely. So in this season of life, what do you think has been the most, obviously God has blessed you to rebuild a good relationship with your daughter and your son, and now 6 grandkids with one on the way.
Mm-hmm.
When you look to the future, and you have these opportunities to speak into other people's lives, and it's a responsibility and it's a weight to some degree, that people are giving you their ear and their heart. What is the message? Like I heard you say, lean into God and lean into people. You didn't use those words, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially we've clarified that. Moving towards God, moving towards people. What is a message that if, and this was the reason I'm sharing this. Recently, I had someone come up to me in public and say, "You don't know me. I was listening to your podcast. I did not believe in God, did not love Jesus. Your podcast made me think about Christ, and I've responded, and I'm a believer now. I've come to faith in Jesus." And I'm wondering today, maybe there's a mom or a dad or a son or a daughter, a grandmother or grandfather that they're walking in addiction or they're touched by addiction right now. What would you want to, and break this apart in two things. If you could, and maybe you can't, but I feel like you have these words, right? Because it would be so hard to pick just one phrase. But like to the parent, to the grandparent, to the child that's walking with someone through addiction, give them a phrase, give them a word, give them an encouragement to how to love that person.
Wow. You got to remember that person without the drugs. You got to remember that person without the substances. Remember the good times, because there were good times.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember the person. The addiction is not the person.
Right.
Your life is a testimony of that, right? There was a season where the banner over your life would have read, that your family even would have read, addict, too far gone, we're not communicating, all of these things.
Yeah.
Your sobriety has proved that your worth and your value was not measured by the substance that you were addicted to, but there was deep intrinsic value in you. It was just trapped.
Right.
It was just trapped in addiction.
Yes.
And praise be to God that I heard someone say this one time, the prettiest flowers bloom out of the dirt. And so addiction is just, for many people, that dark season where they're under the soil, they're in the mud, they're in the grime, there's no light and seemingly no hope. But with time and patience and love and good recovery, they spring out and bloom into who God called them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So love the person, knowing that the addiction doesn't have to define them. And sometimes that's tough. Like you said earlier, it's tough love. It's saying no. It's not giving any money. It's not giving them a place to stay,
right,
or getting the hotel room.
Right.
It's letting them feel that that alone. So now speak, if you can, give a word to the person that's grappling with addiction. Right, and maybe it's the addiction. Addiction. Sometimes recovery is so much like church. In church, for so many years, I heard, "Don't cuss, don't drink, don't have sex before you're married." Right. And I was like, for a while, I thought that there's only 3 sins, right?
Right.
Apparently, there's only 3 things that God's upset with. It's like having a beer, smoking a cigarette, cussing, and maybe having sex with somebody before you're married. Right. Other than that, God's like, whatever.
Right.
I think when you say addiction, sometimes people think, well, it has to be drugs or alcohol.
Right.
Those are real vices.
True.
But the pornography or the credit card or the relationships or the need for approval or the need, that codependent relationship, the need to enable, they don't see those as addictions. They don't. And so what would you say to the addict? And I want to encourage you not to speak just to those that are bound by substance, but to someone that's addicted to anything. What would be your encouragement to them to walk towards freedom?
Well, first of all, pray about it.
Yeah.
And second of all, take a real honest look at yourself. Take a real honest look at your life and be honest with yourself and reach out for help.
Yeah. I guess one thing that I do want to ask, if there are, I want to be delicate, right? I have friends, I have people that I love who, in the process of their addiction, devalued themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And discredited even their life, their physical bodies. How do I communicate as a pastor? Okay, and this is me asking. This is, if other people want to glean from it, they can, but this is me being selfish for a minute. There's so many people in my church and in my community who I love so deeply, and I want to see them embrace freedom. And now it's not so much the addiction that holds them back from confidence and a new life and a new job and reconciled relationships, but it's living under the shame that I am those choices that I made. How can I, as a pastor, and if there are other pastors listening to this podcast, how can we minister to people better in our churches? How can we love them better?
Just let them know they're not alone.
Yeah. So just be present and affirm their worth in Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not alone, and you're not the only one that's made mistakes. We all have skeletons in our closet.
Yeah.
Mine just aren't in the closet anymore. Mine are out there.
Yeah.
But don't hate yourself. Jesus doesn't hate you.
Yeah.
Don't you hate you?
Yeah, I prayed that before we started. I said, God, we're all kind of screwed up, so we really, really need your help.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a connecting message, and what maybe in evangelicalism and in communicating the gospel in 2026 as a pastor and just as a Christian, it's helpful to hear that people just need to be reminded that Jesus loves them and they're not too far gone, right? Mm-hmm. That their worth is beyond their decisions. Yes. And we're all kind of screwed up. I say this all the time. I try to, I encourage our church family with this often, but the ground is level at the foot of the cross. Mm-hmm. There's no too far gone. There's no sin that's too dark or so stained that the grace of God can't redeem it and reclaim that life for His purposes and His good. And so, you didn't say this, but this is the way that I'm interpreting it, and I want to say it. If you're a Christian and you're listening to this podcast, if you're a pastor and you're preaching, knowing that your church and your own heart has its own hurts, habits, and hangups, as Christians, we shouldn't platform ourselves in such a way that we're above anyone. I heard people say that sometimes, we're pulling people up onto we're standing in the chair and we have to pull people up with us. And I'm like, no, I think like we're all on the floor and Christ is pulling us all to himself and he's doing the work. So our job as believers is to remind people the love of God, the grace and goodness that comes in Christ, and affirm their worth as a person, to see them apart from the addiction.
Yes.
And try to get to the person, try to get to the heart of the person.
Yeah.
And remind them that they're not alone. Man, that's beautiful. Well, listen, I'm so grateful that to be able to look in on your story and to look in on, this is what I love too. I think this will be encouraging for a lot of people. You didn't get sober and free of your addiction and clean and say, well, I've crossed the victory line. I've made it. You're working in recovery. You're using your testimony and your story where the enemy could have used it as this blot of shame on your life. You're using it as a banner to point to Christ and say, look what God can do.
Yes.
And look what sobriety can author in your life with your family.
Yes.
I think that's really encouraging that the testimony that you have is a testimony of victory. It's a battle cry, I think, for a lot of brothers and sisters, men and women who are walking through brokenness and addiction today to say, hey, what you're walking through now is not the end of the story. Like there's not a period in your addiction. There can be a comma, a but, and then something new, right? And I love that you're living that out, Bev. I mean, you are showing the world in real time that addiction is not the end of a story. Sometimes it's just the intermission.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's just the dark season. And I try to, your life, and I'm sure people speaking in your life encourage you all the time. It's rare that I get to sit with someone who they've walked through the winter of life, right? And in counseling, I try to tell people this: life is like seasons, right? If you show up in any town in wintertime, you look around and you think, this place is terrible, right? Like there's everything's dead. There's no flowers. Nothing is blooming. The birds don't even sing. They're shoveling snow on the sidewalk. I just want to go inside. I hate this place, And when my friends in New England and Boston, when they tell me about winter, they're like, oh, we just hate everything and each other, And it's just winter.
Right.
Spring does come again.
Yes.
Flowers can bloom again.
Yes.
Birds will sing again. And
yes.
Your life, I want to encourage you with this, is such a testimony that addiction or brokenness, terrible choices, toxic relationships or whatever can just be winter. The flowers can bloom again.
Yes.
The birds can sing again.
They will.
And your sobriety is imaging to the world the incredible power of God and what God can do with one life that says, Lord, I'll surrender. I'll surrender to you and I'll surrender to sobriety.
Yes.
And I'm just so encouraged by that. And I'm so grateful that you're willing and transparent to take that story so publicly. It's not like you really had a choice in the beginning, but then to affirm the truths of that and point to God. So let me ask you, what part now, I know you say you pray and that you leaned more into Celebrate Recovery. We're coming up on, we'll celebrate tonight here at our church, 17 years of having Celebrate Recovery as a ministry. What are some of the things about Celebrate? If someone's listening and they say, what are some, you say, ask for help, get help. Celebrate Recovery is one of those doors that you feel like people can walk into. Tell me what you appreciate or like about Celebrate Recovery that drew you kind of more into it than NA or AA. Those things are really good as well. What about Celebrate Recovery for you specifically do you continue to glean hope from or enjoyment from?
Well, the 12 steps and the 12 traditions definitely come from the Bible.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that Celebrate Recovery it explains it. It explains more in detail. This is why this is exactly what this steps is coming from the Bible. Am I making sense?
So the 12 steps of Celebrate Recovery, where like the make amends, the make amends step, or acknowledging your Creator, acknowledging, making amends for the things that you've done, or where possible, seeking that reconciliation.
Yes.
It ascribes a verse to that so that from God's word that these aren't just arbitrary, hey, we think this will be good, but these are ancient, timeless truths that are anchored in Scripture that you can look back on and you can go to for encouragement as well. So that's something that you really love about it.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. What is there another element that you
Well,
appreciate?
you don't just have to be addicted to drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, you mentioned that. So what are some of the things, we always say what you see here, what you hear here stays here in Celebrate Recovery, right? In NA and AA. So, but what are some of the things that are there things that you have been surprised of when you heard? I'll just briefly share. The first time that I went and shared a piece of my testimony to Celebrate Recovery, I remember there was a precious friend that talked about money and their primary addiction. They had no care for substance, they had no care for sex, but money was like they had this great addiction to money. And so have there been things in addiction that you, as you walked into it, you thought, oh man, I didn't know I needed to be praying for someone that might be battling with X, Y, and Z, or that I needed to be able to extend grace and hope to somebody that might be battling with so-and-so? Is there any addictions like that you saw that you felt inclined to minister to or pray for in a way you never had?
Well, now that I'm involved in Celebrate Recovery, yeah, I have a friend that's addicted to men.
Okay.
So, I do see other addictions that I pray for people.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, listen, Bev, I'm so grateful that you would take a little time, and you have a big night. There's people coming to hear you speak and to hear you share your testimony, and it's going to be. We are so honored to have you in our city and at our church, and we are the beneficiaries of God's grace in your life. The last thing that I want to say. Earlier, we were having this conversation, and I think it's really, really important. You've in the position that you're sitting in now, like I said earlier, you're the mom to like the second most powerful person in the world, and you get to see a lot of the behind the scenes of politics, some of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and even I think you went off social media for a while just because of how public the political side of things had gotten, that it began to wound your heart a little bit to see just how ruthless humans can be to each other.
Yeah.
I shared the story with you earlier, and I just want to hear your thoughts again, that prayerfully we get to a place where the ground is level at the foot of the cross, and we're not judging people based on who they were, who they're not, their addiction or not, non-addiction, their political party or their race, but that we really do see each other again as brothers and sisters. I shared we were laughing earlier because I shared the story of my great grandmother and my grandfather. One was a diehard Republican, Reagan Republican, with the vinyls of all of his speeches, right? Like he would play the records of Ronald Reagan's speeches. And my grandmother was a diehard Democrat. The Democrats freed us from the Great Depression. That was her mantra. And they would have these lively debates at dinner over fiscal responsibility and social nets and all of these things. And I lamented earlier in our conversation, then we laughed because regardless of how heated and frustrated they would be with each other, because both of them were right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like in their own mind, they were both right. They had cheesecake together all the time. Pound cake, actually. My grandmother made pound cake. And I know you get a front row seat to this, seeing people treated in ways that, and probably the dishonesty shared about people that you love and care about. What would be a word of encouragement? Because I know for a fact on this podcast, I have all different races, all different ideologies, all different religions. I have atheist friends and unbelievers who are listening. So if you could give a word to people on how to treat one another, especially in the political spectrum or different ideologies, what would you say? Because you've seen a look to it that none of us, a glimpse of it that none of us have seen. What would be your word of encouragement?
That's not important.
Yeah.
We're important. People are important. Our feelings are important. Republicans aren't important. Democrats aren't important. That's not important.
Yeah.
Our love of each other, that's what's important. We need each other.
Yeah.
And be kind.
Yeah.
Just be kind to each other.
Be kind. I love that. We need each other, and I'll say it like this, and I think this is probably how we'll wrap up. We saw a video not long ago, and I shared a podcast, I think it was 2 years ago, where someone was being attacked by a shark, and everyone stood around them. I mean, there were all these videos they had to take down off social media because no one jumped in to save the person. They all recorded it happening on their phones, though. And there were all of these recordings and videos of this person being attacked, but no one jumped in. And this is what I'm recognizing. And even the conversation we shared earlier when Ronald Reagan was, when the attempted assassination on his life, and he joked from the gurney, he asked the surgeon, are you conservative or a liberal? And he was like, today, Mr. President, we're all,
Right.
Because it didn't matter in that moment.
Right.
And we live in a world now because of sin and because of brokenness. There will be a point in everyone's life where they're drowning, where they're struggling with a shark. And regardless of what it's going to look like, it might look like addiction, might look like money or men or women or differences in political ideology or just difference in cultural distinctives. Yeah. But everyone's going to face a shark. And I guarantee you this, that person would not have cared if it was a Republican or a Democrat or white or black or male or female who would have dove in and tried to help save their life. And so what I hear you saying is focus on the person, care about the person, helping one another, being kind. When you see people walking through a hard time, stop putting people in these boxes of you're this or you're that. No, you're a person created by God. And at the very least, even if you're still steeped in your brokenness and sin, you are the imago Dei. You're the image of God. You were created in the image of God. And so because of that alone, you have value and worth. And I should pursue relationship and kindness with you.
Yes.
Friendship and closeness. Yes. Community.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Well, listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. I'm so grateful that you are
I'm
here.
Honored.
And it's an honor for us. We are incredibly blessed that we get to hear your testimony tonight in full, and that our church and our friends at Celebrate Recovery get to just sit under your wisdom and your advice and your kindness. And so I want you to know that we are praying for you and we are grateful for you. And I praise the Lord that He has authored such freedom and victory in your life, and that you're willing to share that with our crew today.
Of course.
Bev, I appreciate you so much. Thank
you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, listen. Again, we are just so overwhelmed and thankful for Bev and just spending some time with us and sharing her heart. And there's a million other things that she could share and talk about and dive into. But I feel like today she shared exactly what God wants us to have and to hear. TJ Malden Leadership Podcast at gmail.com. If you have a hurt, if you have a habit, if you have a hang up, if you're walking through, it doesn't have to be substance. Listen, if you have questions about theology or God or anything, you have any question at all, I want you to know we're available. I'm available. I'll take your phone call. I'll respond to your email. We will be here for you because we are, like Miss Bev said, we're going after people, man. We care about you. We don't care where you're from or what you're going through. And more than us caring about you, that's minimal. I know this to be true, that while we're yet sinners in the middle of our brokenness, God demonstrated His love. You want to know how much God hates sin? Look at the cross. Look what Christ went through because of sin. You want to know how much God loves you? Look at the cross. Look what God put Christ through so that you could receive His love and His forgiveness is great. You don't have to live under that banner of shame anymore. You don't have to live under that banner of brokenness. In Christ, you can have a new name, a new hope, and a new future, and a new identity that only comes through Jesus. And so just know that we're here for you guys. You know the email. And if you think of someone, if you were listening to this podcast and you say, oh man, I would love to share this with so-and-so, it would mean a great deal to us if you would just share this with that person. Remind them that winter doesn't stay winter forever, but the flowers will bloom again. Love you guys. See you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the TJ Malden Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel. If you enjoyed this episode, share with a friend. For more content, follow us on Instagram and YouTube. If you have any questions you would like to ask TJ, whether it is about life, leadership, or the gospel, you can email those to tjmaldenleadershippodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and we hope you join us again on the TJ Malden Leadership Podcast.